Hello, and welcome to All Our Little Messes, a podcast focused on healing through intentional conversations about parenting, relationships, religion, and more. I am your host, Veronica Winrod, and I'm so happy to have you here, listening in on my thoughts today. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, welcome back to All Our Little Messes. It has been almost 2 months since my last episode, and before we get into what this episode is going to be about, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I had such a long break. So let's get into that little story. So the reason why I had such a long break was because, as some of you might already know, I was pregnant, and let me see, I think it was gestational week 10 or maybe 12, they found a hematoma underneath my placenta. And basically what that was just, a hemorrhage, a bleed underneath the placenta. And so they put me on pelvic rest to watch that and to make sure that it didn't grow and that, the placenta didn't start to detach from the uterine wall, things like that. So by week 18 of the pregnancy, my body had reabsorbed the hematoma. Everything was looking great. And then I think it was week 27, 28, during an ultrasound, they found what's called a marginal cord implantation, it's basically where the cord does not implant in the center of the placenta, it implants on the outer edge. And so they became concerned about the growth of the baby and whether she was going to be growing fine. They were also concerned that during birth I might hemorrhage, because I was already at a risk for hemorrhage because I have blood problems. And so they were concerned that it would increase my risk of hemorrhaging, because during birth with a marginal cord implantation, there is also a concern that the cord would come away from the placenta during labor and delivery, and that poses a risk for hemorrhage for both the mother and the baby. So there was that going on. And then I also had very severe morning sickness that I was on medication for. And so it just became this huge thing. Just everything was just so much to handle with that I was just I mentally cannot deal with a podcast and a blog on top of everything. And looking back, I should have, at least done one last episode and blog post about what was going on and been okay, I'm taking a break for 2 months or whatever. But I just didn't have the mental capacity for that either. So I just kind of quit, and I was just I'll pick it up again after she's born and after I've had a chance to kind of mentally come out of all that. So the birth was actually super easy, super chill. As far as births go, I say super easy and super chill. Birth is just just another day. But honestly, it's not. It's a huge job. So don't want to downplay that. But everything was pretty easy as far as birth goes, of course. And she came out, it was a girl, she came out absolutely perfect. There was 0 complications. There was a little bit of bleeding, but they never turned into anything super scary, anything, and they were able to take care of it, and they were on it right away. They were honestly so prepared there. I gave birth at my local hospital, and so they were so awesome. My midwife was amazing, and the labor and delivery nurses were so prepared and so on it. And I had certain things I wanted to happen with me and the baby, and certain things I didn't want to happen, and they were all so amazing when it came to accommodating all of that and like making sure that it happened and like reminding each other. And like I had my birth plan in my chart, and I had my birth plan at the nurse's station, and like they had it up on my board on the wall, and like everybody was making sure. So that was really, really awesome. So yeah, like it was definitely one of my better birth experiences. I've had 3 kids now, and so it was definitely one of the better ones going into it, and coming out with the pediatrician appointments and everything afterwards. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. And why I took a break for so long was I had a baby. So yeah, with all of that, let's get into this week's episode. So this week I wanted to talk about like my own personal parenting goals as I come out of 2023 and go into 2024. This year has been huge for us as a family when it comes to our parenting and really solidifying like a plan or an idea of what we want our parenting to look like. And as we go into 2024, like especially over the last couple of weeks, I've really found myself thinking about, ways that I can, make my parenting better for my children. And because, coming out of, a household that used authoritarian style of parenting and corporal punishment, and moving away from that and going into parenting that's more authoritative or gentle parenting where corporal punishment is not used, and, the child is allowed a voice and things like that, like it's very difficult. And so you don't always have, the tools for that kind of change and that kind of shift. And so, I've had to, and my husband has also had to teach ourselves through, research and, various blogs and, articles and books and things like that. We've had to teach ourselves a lot of these tools, but at the same time, it's like we're trying to teach ourselves a skill at the same time that we teach it to our children. And so it's very difficult because we're reparenting ourselves as we parent our children. Like we're learning alongside our children, and it's very difficult. And so like as we're moving into the new year, like I've found myself thinking, okay, so like what can I change about my parenting that can help my children? And like one of the first things that I thought of was the fact that as we read these parenting books and as we follow all these Instagram pages and these Facebook pages and, watch all these YouTube videos and things on authoritative, gentle parenting, we are caught up in like that very polarizing idea of what gentle parenting has to be in order to be correctly labeled as gentle parenting. And so like I have found myself like caught up in what gentle parenting should be and what it should look like. And I have like found myself just absolutely in despair because I am not doing it right. I am not doing it according to what these influencers on Instagram and YouTube are saying I should do it. And so I become very, very discouraged and like, why am I even doing this? It's not even worth it. I should just give up and I should just move on and I should go back to what I know because I know that'll work and my kids will, I'll get my kids to behave that way. And like it's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle getting caught up in these things. And like today I was thinking about it, and as I was actually nursing my youngest, and I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across this Instagram post and it really struck me. I'm actually going to read it to you guys, just the post. You can raise a child to feel absolutely safe and sound with voicing how they feel, and then still be respectful of the etiquette and manners you expect from them as parents. Do not let anybody tell you any different. Stop subscribing to the parental polarizing advice out here because it's distracting you from trusting your own parental instincts. And like, that is something that I honestly forgot. Like, I don't have to follow what everybody else is doing, because really, like, gentle parenting, at least in my mind, comes down to, right and wrong. There's a right way to treat people and there's a wrong way to treat people, especially children. And, as parents, we do have, parental guiding instincts that, we're all supposed to follow when it comes to, etiquette and respecting our children. And, when I've got all of these, here I am quoting, saying, don't follow the influencers. And then I just, I read a post from an Instagram influencer, but it struck me as very true. Basically, they were saying, don't follow us, don't listen to us, listen to your personal parenting instincts. Follow what you think is true and what you think is right. And, basically it won't fail you. Like, God won't fail you. Your conscience won't fail you. And so, like, that is something that I'm like, that's my 2024, New Year's resolution, is to really take that to heart. Like, follow my parenting instincts, just because I didn't do something the way, a gentle parenting influencer on Instagram did it, does not mean that I am failing as a parent. I am just as good of a parent. I am the parent that my children need. And that's why, God chose me to be their parent, is because God knew what these kids needed. And like, I will fail some days. I will not do my best, or I will lose my temper, and I might yell at my kids one day, but I can still try again. I can still apologize to my kids. I can still mend the broken bonds, and I am still the parent that, my kids need. I am the parent that God knows I can be. So, ignore that advice on Instagram, because it really does just drag us down. It really, really does. Because I don't know about you guys out there, but it makes me feel like a failure when I read about all of these posts, when I read about all of these things that these gentle parents do, and all of the Montessori games, and the floor beds, and don't swaddle, and don't feed your kid this, and don't yell at your kids, and don't make your kid don't have your kids wear this kind of clothes, and they can only play with these kind of toys, and they can only live in this sort of environment, and they can't watch cartoons with bright colors, and they can't watch cartoons that have a scene length of only 3 seconds, and on and on and on and on and on. And like, honestly, when I read that stuff, it really just makes me start overthinking everything I'm doing. Should they not be watching Cocomelon? Am I really rotting their brain out? Am I affecting their attention span? Should they not eat that food? Am I really affecting, their brain development by letting them eat that food? Or, my 3-year-old eats grapes, and he's never had a problem. But the other day, I started freaking out because this one mom posted a picture of her 5-year-old's meal, and the grapes were cut into quarters. And she said she still did that because she was so terrified of choking, and she didn't understand how any mom out there could not cut the grapes at least in half. And so I started freaking out because, my 3-4-year-old eats his grapes, just eats them. And that's the kind of thing that I see on social media that just like makes me second guess all of the parenting that we do. And like, are we doing things correctly? Are we doing things right? And so it just, goes back to my point from before. everything out there is such a polarizing idea of what parenting should be. Everybody has the right idea and everybody else is wrong. And it completely ignores the fact that God gave us these children because He knew what those children needed. Like, we all have the potential to become the parents that these children need. Don't ignore your parenting instincts. Ignore social media. Ignore social media. But we all have the potential to become like the best parent that our child needs. We just have to follow our conscience and our parenting instincts and know your children and know yourself and know your own feelings and know what you're good at and really apply all of that, because that is going to really help you succeed and like build that relationship of trust and love that is going to help you become like the parent that your children really needs, because everything, like, parenting is built on connection, right? And so, if you know where you're failing and you know what you're good at, that is also going to help you build that connection between you and your child, which is going to help you, rely on those parenting instincts and become that parent that, we all are capable of being, and that, God has definitely created us to be. Like, He gave us this job for a reason. And, it's really sad that, like, so many of us at the end of the day just, lie in bed. I mean, I know I do. Like, just lie in bed and just think of all of the ways that we could have been better that day. Today I yelled at my 4-year-old because he woke the baby up. And, like, looking back, and like, I apologized later because looking back, he was just being a happy kid and playing with his brother. Like, he didn't realize that his sister was sleeping, for one. Like, I didn't make an announcement to everybody, okay, everybody try to be quiet, your sister's sleeping. I didn't make an announcement, so he had no idea that his sister was sleeping, and he was just being a happy, joyful child, playing with his little brother. No, there was no fighting, there was no screaming, there was no yelling. He was just being happy, and kids are loud. There was a lot of loud joyfulness going on. And, like, I lost it because I could hear the baby start to, like, move around. And so I yelled really loud, and, like, looking back, and I'm just like, there was no reason for that. Like, he didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Why did I yell? Like, there was no point. I was triggered because I didn't want to deal with a crying baby. And so I took that frustration out on my son, who is, completely defenseless and didn't know any better. And so, that's an example of, the kind of thing that I am trying to change as I move forward into 2024. Like, that's something that I'm actually working on with my therapist, actually, is like finding tools to change things about myself that, affect my parenting, and like learn how to become a better parent, and like let go of, control and things like that. So, yeah, like, as we move forward into 2024, I would definitely like to invite all of you to, like, look back on this past year and, think, about all of the things that are in our lives that are only there because of things we've seen on social media or on YouTube, things like that, and ask ourselves, are we doing this because it's for the right reasons, or are we doing this because of peer pressure? Do I have these ideas, or do I think I should do these things because social media says I should? Or am I doing these things because it's the right thing to do and it will actually benefit me and my parenting journey and my marriage and my children? Like, is this actually something that God is asking me to do? So before I close this episode out, I wanted to give a little bit of encouragement to the moms who, like myself, have a wild child. I have a wild child, and he challenges me every single day. And when I say challenge, I mean he drives me batshit crazy. I have I don't remember a time where I wasn't feeling crazy because of the things this child does, says, or wants to do. Yeah, he challenges me every day. He is the most independent person I have probably ever met in my entire life. He's 4 years old and thinks he can do anything, everything he thinks he can do. And, it's difficult to hold him back because he doesn't want to be held back because he's convinced he can do everything. So, there's that aspect of it too. And he's also the one who is, because we allow, to a certain extent, we do allow our children to, speak their minds here. So, he will tell us when, he feels that, we have done something wrong towards him. And so that has been challenging to deal with as well, because, I was not raised with that. So it is difficult to try to navigate a child who, even if it's respectfully, is telling you, Mom, that was not okay. You should not have done that. And, he has no problem, telling us that. He has no problem, advocating for even his younger brother, if his younger brother is being treated in a way that he sees as unjust. And, he's very protective. He's very outgoing. He's very independent. He's very sensitive. He's a wild child. He's one of those people where I tell others who, they see my child in public. And I mean, I've actually had this happen to me. It was actually in church. I had he was 2 years old, and he was talking, and we were getting ready to take him outside so that he could do, we call it getting our wiggles out, where usually before church, on the walk into church, like from the car to the church doors, we tell them, okay, it's time to get your wiggles out. You need to get all of your yelling out right now. You need to get all of your bouncing out right now on our way to the church doors. And so, our toddlers do that on the way to the church doors. And it actually does help a lot because, in their mind, they've gotten their wiggles out, Well, on this particular day, it was just not working. He was bouncing off the walls. He was just being the wild child, right? So my husband was getting ready to take him outside and to get some energy off of him. This was during the homily at Mass. And we had an elderly, well, not elderly, just like middle-aged woman sitting in front of us. And she kept glancing to the side, just with this irritated look every single time my child would make any noise whatsoever. And he made, I don't exactly remember what noise it was, only that it was really loud. And my husband automatically put his hand over Dylan's mouth and said, shh, really loudly, you can't yell. And he started standing up to take him out so that he could go yell outside. And this woman turned around and went, shh, really loudly, and then started shaking her heads at us. And then turned back around, still shaking her head, and she had the most awful look on her face. And I've never forgotten that, because that is the reaction any strong-willed child gets to any kind of behavior that society deems as improper behavior for adults. Not for children, but improper behavior for adults. So it's improper behavior for an adult to start screaming and yelling in church, right? if an adult started doing that, I believe every other adult in the church or the building or the store or whatever would turn around and would look at that adult like they were crazy, right? Because that is improper behavior for an adult. So here we have a toddler, a child, behaving like a child, and the adults are turning around and telling them to please stop behaving like a child. Like it's, out of the ordinary. And like anytime, my strong-willed child behaves like a strong-willed child, everybody acts like they're in shock. There's shaking of heads and rolling of eyes and, oh, you've got your hands full, or why can't you learn to control your child? I've gotten that one before. And, it's funny because like those kinds of reactions are always on the days when, like in my mind, my kid's just acting totally normal like any other child. Those are the days I get comments. I don't get comments on the days when he's really going crazy. But yeah, like the wild childs, get the reactions in public, and they're very sensitive, and they're very stubborn, strong-willed, and they don't mind calling you out on injustices that they perceive in their worlds. And those, in my mind, are the people who I actually had someone tell me that they have a child like this, and they said that she was either going to lead a gang in prison, or she was going to be the CEO of a multinational corporation. And I love that, because that is my child to a T. He's either going to lead a gang in prison, or he's going to be the CEO of a multinational corporation, because that is just how he is. He walks into a room and he just takes charge. He is in command of that room. He is in command of the situation, and he is talking to everybody, telling everybody his name, and telling everybody what he did that day. I mean, if a game is being played and nobody's following the rules, he's going to make sure that everybody follows the rules. Like, there is no ifs, ands, or buts. It's going to happen. And so I've really been thinking about the strong-willed child, which is what kind of led me into, thinking about what I was talking about earlier, changing and really, fine-tuning my parenting going into 2024 was parenting my strong-willed child, was parenting my wild child, because that's the area I struggle with, is, basically relinquishing control, because that's really what they need, is relinquishing our control. And in order for them to thrive, we have to let go of this idea that we have to control our wild child, because in most cases where I'm trying to control him, he's not actually doing anything that needs to be curbed or stopped. He's just doing something that makes me uncomfortable or annoys me, but it's not actually wrong behavior, and it's not behavior that needs to be disciplined. And so that's something that I think a lot of us with strong-willed children, or the wild child, could do, is relinquish control. And I think we'll find that in a lot of cases, when we relinquish control, our child is going to relinquish control too, because they tend to fight back when something fighting against them. Then their automatic reaction is to fight back. And so if we go into a parenting situation already keyed up, they're going to see that, and they're going to feed into that. That's their automatic reaction. And so I think we need to relinquish that control and that idea in our heads that we have to control the wild child, and we need to, control the stubbornness, and we need to control the strong-willed spirit within our child in order for them to thrive, because that is the complete opposite of who they are. It is because they are strong-willed, it is because they have that spirit that they do thrive, and that they can and will thrive. And if we try to curb that and crush that, then that's going to completely curb and crush who they are and the things that they could achieve later in life. And so, that is like the essence of their personality. That is the essence of who they are. And without that, part of themselves, without that tool that God gave them, then there is no way that they could succeed. And so, and I've seen this in adults before where, their spirits were absolutely crushed when they were children. And, growing up, like I have this friend who always talked about the things that he wanted to do, but he couldn't do them because he was always told no. And he was like any kind of ambition, any kind of ideas, everything was just always crushed. And like that spirit within him was just completely obliterated. And so now he always second guesses himself. And he's like one of the most ambitious and like intelligent people I know. But it feels crushed all the time because of that. And so, and this is like 40 years later after he's already left the house. It's like 40 years after, and he's still feeling that way. And it just goes to show that, so much of what we say to our strong-willed, our wild child really does affect them. And so, like, the more we try to control them, the more they're going to fight back until there is no fight left, until we've absolutely crushed them. And that is the last thing that we would ever want to do to our children. And so, like, we need to learn to let go of our control of another person, because without that, then our children, our strong-willed children, and our wild child will not succeed in life. Thank you for listening to this latest episode of All Our Little Messes. I wanted to briefly talk about as well the next couple episodes that we got coming up. We've got quite a few different topics coming up. I've got holistic mental health care. I've got an episode that I'm sure some of you are. I'm actually not quite sure how this one's going to be received. I have an episode on pornography use within Christian circles coming up. I have some episodes on the book, a couple of follow-up episodes on how to train your child. I have a couple episodes on parenting and a couple episodes on marriage as well that I have coming up, and I either have recorded or are in the middle of being recorded. So there's also a couple of guest episodes thrown in there. A couple of them I'm very excited about. I have a psychotherapist that I had brought on to talk about holistic mental health care that I'm very excited about, because she brought in a few very interesting perspectives that I'd never actually heard from a therapist before. So I'm very excited for you guys to hear about that one. I also brought in a person who has spent a good portion of their life in ministry, helping like fellow Christians and Catholics fight against the bondage of pornography. And he had a lot of amazing insight into, that process. And we also talked a lot about marriage and like what a true biblical marriage looks like and how it's affected by, modern ideas on pornography and sin and things like that. So, I'm just very excited about a bunch of these episodes that are coming up. So I hope you guys will follow along, and don't forget to hit subscribe. I said subscribe. I'm actually not sure if it's a subscribe. Anyways, don't forget to follow the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to it. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe and follow. And if you like this episode, send it to as many friends as you think will enjoy it. I will see you guys all next week.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of All Our Little Messes. Please let us know how much you enjoyed it below, and add any questions you have about this episode. Also, don't forget to follow us on Patreon for amazing exclusive perks, including early access to podcast episodes and bonus episodes every month. We've also recently added a support group for all of our paid patrons. You can check us out on Facebook and Instagram for daily updates and insights that mirror podcast topics. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.